Hello and welcome to the weekly Dartcast. I'm Ben the Groper Roper and you're listening to my darting teammate Alex the Spectacle Wonder 131 Moss. 180!
Hello and welcome to an episode of the weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. It's the Darts podcast that packs a punch, but not in that way. I'm Alex Moss and joining me as always it is the Darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good, thank you. Thankfully, my team, Colchester's game tonight, which would have been going on whilst we were recording this, has been postponed, so I've not got to worry about that. It's all focused on the darts for me, at least, and we've got plenty to bring you on the show, as always. Delighted to say we're going to be joined by ITV's darts presenter, Jacqui Oatley, and one of the title winners from the weekend, the Isle of Man Classic champion. She beat Beau Greaves in the final. Vicky Pruim also going to be calling in as well. But let's start this week's show with a look back at events in Belgium over the weekend. We had the Belgian Darts Open, the first of 13 stops on the Euro Tour for 2024. And Luke Littler wins the title on his Euro Tour debut. He's now in a provisional spot for the World Match Play. Probably got that Blackpool B&B already booked up now. But should we be surprised anymore at what this young man is achieving in his debut season on the PDC Tour?
No. Moving on, a lot of talk about the we'll come to that other question later. But seriously, no, we shouldn't be. There's nothing to be surprised about. We saw in the World Championships just how good he was, and how unfazed he was by pretty much everything that could be thrown at him. I've still had my doubts. I still have some. It's still early in the season, and he's still going to lose more than he wins in terms of tournaments, not matches. Overall, he's going to win more matches, a lot more matches than he's going to lose, but he's not going to win more than 50% of the tournaments. He hasn't done that, obviously, in the Premier League. Yeah, he's won his first Players' Championship event, but he lost the next three. Yeah, he's won his first Euro Tour, but I don't expect him to win six of the next 12. He's not even in two of the next three to begin with. So if you look at it, he is going to lose more tournaments than he wins. And we still don't know how he's going to fully respond to losing. This past weekend was a great sign for him. And it is a sign that maybe those fears aren't really a long-term fear. I never thought they were. I thought they were more of a short-term, but a short-term can still be a year or so. But there have been some signs in the Players' Championships when he's gone out, he hasn't bounced back right away. And on those Euro Tours, he didn't bounce back right away. The qualifiers, I mean. But he did bounce back from a tough loss in the Premier League after a brutal loss in one of the matches of all time at the UK Open, and he bounces back by one of the greatest Euro Tours we've ever seen. More 180s than anyone's thrown in a Euro Tour weekend. Averaged over a ton in 5 of the 6 matches. The only time he fell below it in that second round against Krzysztof Ratajski, where he averaged an abysmal 97. Just an absolutely fantastic weekend from Luke Littler, and there's not really any reason to be surprised about it. He's taken on players who are in form and beaten them. He averaged 110 against Jermaine Wadamina, who had already won 3 matches impressively up until then, and averaged nearly 103 himself in that match. He beat him 6-2 with the 110 average. And in the final, Rob Cross just played a brilliant match, missed a bowl for the title, and kept coming back. Rob Cross kept inching in front, and Luke Littler stuck with that 108 of Rob Cross the entire way, threw a 9-darter in the 11th leg to take the lead, and even after Cross came back, took back the lead and nearly closed it out in the 14th leg. Luke Littler hit double 5 last dart in hand, and then did give the former world champion a sniff in the 15th and final. Well, I guess he gave him a sniff at a 100, but he didn't get a dart at double from it. And in the end, Luke Littler was the champion, and Luke Littler answered every question that was asked of him that weekend, and then some. It was just another sensational weekend, but not a surprising one. There's not any surprise that this kid has. Is he as good as Phil Taylor or Michael Van Gerwen were at their best? The early signs are yes. The early signs are he can do everything they did. It's still early signs, and there's still more I want to see from him. And I still think there will be learning and growing pains as the season goes along. But I will never be surprised if Luke Littler coming out of a weekend with a title, averaging over 100 in all but one match, because that's pretty much par for the course for him. Or at the very least, the statistics are par for the course. There are players who can throw it back at him. Rob Cross did it in the final. Damon Hedda did it in Minehead and came pretty close to doing it again this past weekend in Visa. And other players will do it from time to time. But Luke Littler rarely takes a leg off, let alone a match off. And that's why there's really nothing surprising about his dominance.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm in the same camp as you. People that aren't surprised anymore by what Luke Littler is doing. And you mentioned a few names there, Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen. It does feel different, doesn't it? It does feel like we are watching the next incarnation in the line of Eric Bristow, Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen. These are names, these are players that transcend an entire sport. And for some people, they may be bigger than the sport. For a lot of years, darts was Phil Taylor. You thought of darts and you immediately thought of Phil Taylor. He was the one name on everybody's lips when it come to darts. And it was the same with Eric through the 80s, then MVG for a more recent period as well. And Luke Littler, he may not have that glittering CV of world titles, of major titles that Bristow, Taylor, Van Gerwen have got, but he has got that star power, hasn't he? And obviously his age is a factor in this. At 17, we very rarely see such brilliance from players this age on a global stage and in front of thousands in the crowd and the many more people that are watching at home. So I've said it before, I think it is that freedom that he plays with. Very rarely does he seem flustered or not at ease when he's up on the stage throwing darts. And for those of our listeners here in the UK, you might have seen his appearance on the Jonathan Ross show at the weekend, a popular chat show over here. Luke, he was only on it for the last 10 or so minutes, and spoiler alert, it wasn't live, it was pre-recorded, but it was the only time that Luke looked a little uncomfortable on screen all weekend, because when he's playing darts, it just looks so natural and effortless. And the run to the world final, that did take everyone by surprise, and you might have tipped him to win a few games, get past Christian Kist and Andrew Gilding, make it through to that last 32, maybe make the quarterfinals. But I think the way he performed at Ali Pali, the levels that he produced, no one saw that coming. And the World Series in Bahrain, that was less surprising, but still, after all the hype, the noise that followed the World Championships, you would have expected for there to be a drop-off and for there to be an effect on his game because of that. But he rocks up, throws the 9-darter, wins the title. The Players' Championship title had a 9-darter in there as well. I think for some of us, and I'm including myself in this category, that was one of the last question marks that I had with Luke Littler was, could he do it on a cold, and we know it was cold as we found out, but on a cold Monday in Wigan in these floor events, and he won the title on his debut. Another debut ticked off with a title, the European Tour. We know Luke Littler, he can play darts to a world-class level anywhere, and the rate of 9-darters, that is extraordinary. He's had one in the World Series, he's had one in the Players' Championships, he's had one on the Euro Tour now as well, 3 for the season, and we still are only in March, so you'd expect that rate of 9-darters to slow down. But the success he's having in his debut year, that surely is only going to continue.
Well, a lot of talk about the post-match incident between Luke Littler and Ricardo Pietreczko in the semifinals on Sunday night. I'll only be able to give a brief answer to this because I missed the entire semifinals, although I've heard a little bit about it. But Alex, what did you make of the incident?
Yeah, this has really grabbed the headlines, and over here in the UK, Sky Sports News, the 24-hour rolling sports news channel, they ran a bulletin about it on Monday morning. They had Wayne Mardle call in to the channel in the afternoon, and Luke Littler himself, I think he was in his bedroom or somewhere at home, he called in and gave his reaction to it live on air as well. So Sky Sports, they've certainly bigged it up some more, and I think it would be good to get a penny for the thoughts of Ricardo Pietreczko right now, because he's had a great weekend, that run to the semi-finals, and it's ended on a sour note, really. His reaction at the end of that game after losing to Luke Littler, and it's blown up, and everyone's having their say on it. Looking at the incident, I know it was probably a heat of the moment reaction. You're in the heat of battle, the emotions can quite easily get the better of you, but I can't help think that this is a situation, an incident that could have easily been avoided by Ricardo. You shake your opponent's hand, you both walk off the stage, and maybe then you can have a quiet word backstage away from the cameras, or if you're part of Ricardo's entourage, a manager or whoever he's got with him at that time, give him 5 minutes after the game, let the adrenaline ease off and think a little bit more clearly after that. And if you're still upset, then maybe go and discuss it at the next Pro Tour or the next time you see each other. And had he done that, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, and well, no one would. And I think it's not a good look for Ricardo, and we know it's not the first time he's reacted badly after a defeat or during a match. That the Grand Slam with Beau Greaves last year, a prime example of that. And it's a shame because he's a quality player, and he came very close to beating the eventual world champion Luke Humphries at Ali Pali just a few months ago. Incidents like this, it can set a player back, and it does build that reputation amongst some of the fans that he's someone that we can wind up easily, we can get a reaction from. And when I say fans, that small portion of fans who are going to be in the crowd, they can have an influence that way. So I think the incident on Sunday is come about because, from what we gather, is Luke Littler was on the 147, he's gone treble 19, then he's attempted top's ball to take it out, went high on the top, so he didn't get a dart at the bull in the end. But I think those who know Luke Littler, they know that he likes to go for those sort of finishes, and those who know me know that I love a flashy finish. So personally, I've got no problem with it. I think more of a red flag for me was some of Luke's comments on Sky on Monday. He referred to playing against him, that's a cup final for his opponents. I'm guessing it was said in jest for the most part, but those lines, they do get clipped up and they can come back to bite you, and we've certainly seen that with other players in the past as well. So maybe that is part of this incident that Luke needs to have a look at going forward.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, especially for me to comment on, having not seen it and having only read about it. As you mentioned, it's not the first time that Ricardo Pietreczko has found himself in this situation, and it doesn't seem like it'll be the last, but I also don't think it'll be the last time that Luke Littler will find himself in the situation, partially because I think some players are probably going to be frustrated at how quickly he is finding success. But also, he is young, he's very mature for his age, but he's not as mature as, a 30-something-year-old player on tour is. And we've seen him not necessarily sulk after losses, but not be as jovial sometimes as others. And Ricardo Pietreczko threw that right back at him. We'll see how that goes, but I think it will, he will rub some people the wrong way as the season and year goes on, but I don't think he deserves some of the criticism he's received from other people, and some people in the media calling him a bad loser or something like that. He is, 17 years old. He's a very good loser for someone who's 17. But I don't want to comment too much on it because I didn't see it and I didn't have a chance to look at it before this. I do want to mention, though, because we love talking about a certain someone, it's hardly the most noteworthy post-match incident from this past weekend involving a PDC tour card holder. The DRA put out a statement just before we recorded, about an hour before we recorded, that Adam Smith-Neale will be suspended until they've been able to complete an investigation. And right now, we've only seen a very poor quality video. But I still want to talk about it because I know you're a big fan of Adam Smith-Neale, Alex. So I figured it was worth us talking about. But beyond that, I'm just rambling now. I think this is a lot of... I think the Luke Littler, Ricardo Pietreczko thing is a lot of talk about what isn't all that much. There's a lot worse things that have happened in darts just over the last few days.
Yeah, there definitely has been. And I'm just glad that I got my money back for that Blade 5 that never turned up from Adam. But we'll be back in a moment to talk a little bit more about our question of the week. But before we do, let's bring in our first guest on the show this week. She is the ITV Darts presenter. Here's our chat with Jacqui Oatley. I'm pleased to say we're joined by ITV's Darts presenter Jacqui Oatley. Thanks for the time, Jacqui. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you, Alex. Good to chat to you. I'm just slightly frazzled after the weekend. It's just a crazy, crazy weekend. Absolutely brilliant. But I was rudely bought some red wine last night, which has made me feel a little bit groggy today. No, hanging in there. Just a brilliant weekend.
Well, I'm sure you're not the only one that's been at Minehead this weekend that's feeling the same. And we are talking less than 24 hours on from the UK Open. It's become a biannual pilgrimage for yourself, heading to Minehead every March and November to present the darts. What's that journey like for you?
It depends what time of day you leave. It's all about the tactics. But yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough to get past Stonehenge without any problems, then that's the key thing. But yeah, I love it. Honestly, twice a year. It's just something to really look forward to. And there's so many reasons to look forward to it. And the ITV team genuinely are one of the main reasons. the tournaments, the two of them, Players' Championship finals as well as this one, are a huge reason. We love this one the most out of all our tournaments, UK Open, because of this year was 158 players. The craziness, the amateurs against the professionals. We do root for the Riley's qualifiers, we really, really do, because personally as a journalist, I love stories, and I love human interest stories, and I love the people, and I'm always pestering poor Dave Allen, the wonderful media man for the PDC, for stories, any information that he could, any nuggets that he can provide us with, or, we try and find family members when we're there, and Ned Bolting does a brilliant job of that, just to try and unearth the backgrounds of these players, because they all come from different backgrounds, and we really want to know more about them and bring them to life, because they're different types of players to the ones we normally see on a weekly basis, for example, in the Premier League, which is brilliant in itself, but this is just different. And I love all those human interest stories. So, yeah, I love these Minehead tournaments, and I love meeting up with the ITV team. And, it's just a shame it's going to be a little while now till the next one. That's the only downside of coming back from the UK Open.
Definitely was. Lots to chat to you about, but we'll just firstly touch on the events over the weekend. Dimitri van den Berg beating Luke Humphries. It was a thrilling final, 11-10. He was 7-2 and 8-4 up. Luke come back to force that deciding leg. Have you seen a more dramatic finish than the one that we were treated to last night?
Oh, it was incredible, wasn't it? I love those kind of matches, well, especially when they go all the way. I mean, I never really care who wins. I just want entertainment. I love a talking point, and we got that last night, didn't we? So yeah, it was so dramatic. It was so high octane, and the thing about that arena, I'm sure loads of your listeners will have been to that arena in Minehead. Plenty won't have. Probably watched it on TV, wondering what it's like. And 5,000 people sell out, all packed into that one arena on the Sunday night. You can just feel the tension and the oohs, the ahs, the gusts, the how could that happen? How could there be 6 mismatched darts by the one player and 2 by the other? And yeah, it was a brilliant final, had so much to it. I did think Luke was going to come back and do it. I really did in the end, but fair play to Dimmy. And he gave us a talking point, didn't he? Which has been pretty controversial. So yeah, it was really entertaining. We have had some pretty dramatic finishes over the years, though, it has to be said, not just that one.
Yeah, that was a special one to add to the list. And as someone who grew up wanting to be a sports journalist, whenever we get someone on from the media on the show, I'm always interested to hear the story behind how they got into the industry. So first of all, sport, I know it's something that you took a liking to from a young age, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I didn't grow up wanting to be a sports journalist. I had no idea it was possible. So obviously watched sport on TV. I was into all sorts of sports. Before football, people kind of assume it was football first. It really wasn't. I went to an all-girls school and nobody there was into football. My brother wasn't, my parents weren't. So no introduction at all to football, but always loved sport, every sport. I watched everything. Literally everything, possibly with the exception of racing. It's not my favourite, but I'd watched the Grand National. So yeah, snooker, wall-to-wall World Championship, I'd watch all of that, Olympics, everything. And then football later. But no, I didn't have any introduction to journalism or any thought about it. It was really, when did it start? I think I went to university, did a German degree, lived in Germany for a year, travelled around the world for a year, came back thinking, oh heck, better get a job, using a language recruitment agency. I ended up working in intellectual property, protecting brand names, and that obviously wasn't my life passion. I was going to watch my football team every Saturday, all around the country. I was playing football every Sunday, but I knew I needed more in my life revolving sport rather than just weekends. And I wasn't fulfilled in my job. And when I injured my knee badly playing football, I was told I couldn't play anymore, and I was absolutely devastated. Couldn't really do any kind of sport. Still can't now, unfortunately. Not proper sport, running, nothing like that. And so I just thought, well, life's too short not to be immersed in sport. So, I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to work in radio? I listened to 5 Live all the time. Had no interest in working in TV, not at all. And I'd always listened to BBC WM growing up in Wolverhampton, and Radio 5 as it was initially when it started. And thought that would be a great thing to do. And so I'm trying to give you the short version here because it's quite long. And so I went online and I looked up biographies of various people who did that job, and I saw somebody started in hospital radio. So I joined up with my local hospital radio station and went and got the request of the patients, and then did a sports report on an evening once a week, and then did an evening course in radio production another night, and then an evening course in print journalism another night. And I thought, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. And then at the end of the 6 months, I was like, okay, well, how do I go from working full-time in intellectual property to a full-time job for something I'm not really qualified for, that lots of people want to do? And so I decided to give up my job and give up my flat, so I had nowhere to live and no income, and rang around my friends and asked if they minded if I sleep on their floor or landing. Nobody had spare rooms in those days, for a night or a week, and they were super kind and let me travel around with a carrier bag with a duvet and pillows, and did full-time work experience, and knew absolutely that's what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, I want to do this properly. I don't just want to start doing some work I don't really know what I'm doing. I want to learn my trade. So I went back to university. I spent all my money that I'd saved up over the years, all my savings that were for a flat one day, and paid for a postgraduate course in Sheffield. And as soon as I got there, I wrote to all the local BBC radio stations and said, look, I'm a mature student, I'm in a hurry, can I come in and see you? And luckily BBC Leeds TV News gave me 2 days work experience, and that was it. That was my break. I got through the front door. I fainted on my first day. I don't know how that happened, right in the middle of the newsroom. Very embarrassing. I went to cover a Leeds United financial disaster story, if you remember that, back in the day, Peter Ridsdale, etc. And collared the sports editor when I was there, saying, look, I'd love to come in and see you. Sport's my passion. I'd really love to work. And did a voice test and aptitude test, and they gave me a 10-minute slot on a Saturday being non-league football reporter while I was still doing my course. And that was it. I started that way, and I just worked and worked and worked. £21 a week I was paid for that. And at the end of my course, I started doing shifts, filling in for people who were on holiday, and carried on. One thing led to another, and then was doing more and more for BBC Leeds until I got a phone call from 5 Live in London saying, they'd heard my work, etc., and they wanted me to come down and sort of try out. And it all went from there. Having worked for BBC London, I started doing overnights at 5 Live, travelling up and down from Leeds all the time, and just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked every hour, every minute, every day. Just learned my trade, starting off in non-league football in Leeds. That became my patch, and that's where I learned how to become a journalist, how to get contacts, how to get information, and how to broadcast, and started match reporting there, started commentating after doing the sports bulletins. And so I just learned pretty quickly, because I worked pretty much every single minute and haven't really stopped since.
Well, it's worked out well in the end, and I've listened and read to a few interviews that you've done in the past, and I know you often get asked about Match of the Day as well. You were the first female to commentate on a game in the show's history back in 2007. There was a lot of media attention around it, probably similar to what Luke Littler's getting now. But how did you put all that to one side and not let it affect your work?
Yeah, that was a bit nuts. That was a little bit on the crazy side. That's not what I came into journalism for. As a journalist, you don't want to be the story. You want to tell the stories, as I love doing on the Darts. I want to ask Mason Was what they think. Nobody cares what I think. I'm not the story. And so that was very unsettling when I did become front page news and back page news and all the way through the paper page news for a few days. It was extraordinary, and it wasn't what I was out to achieve, and I just went dark. I didn't do a single interview. People kept saying, great profile. I said, I'm not in this for the profile. I'm in this to tell the story of what's going on the football field. I don't want the cameras on me. The cameras should be on the field. And it was just a case of keep my head down, just try and get through it. And I literally just had to get through it, because I didn't have any prep time that week, because my phone didn't stop, and it was just absolutely wild, with being the subject of a debate on every single news outlet, TV, radio, newspaper. And I just thought, just keep doing what I've always done, which is just get my head down, work, try and do my best. And got through that one, and I did several more, and luckily nobody batted an eyelid after that. It was just trying to get through that first one, and yeah, I'm still doing it however many, 17 years later.
And you had various roles as well. You've mentioned a few of them there, being a sports reporter, a commentator. Obviously, we all know you as the presenter on the Darts here. All require their own specific skills. Which of them is your favourite, or do you share an equal love for all three?
That's a great question, Alex. I'm so lucky to have done pretty extensively all those different types of roles, literally every role, from pitch side reporter, from tunnel interviewer, post-match, pre-match, to commentator, radio, TV, World Cups and presenting as well. I'm a real people person. I love people, and I did find that even though I really wanted to commentate for radio, I did find that to be a really solitary existence. And I still do now, even though I'm doing TV commentary. The prep, I do so much prep, and I just spend way too much time doing prep, really. And so I spend too much time sitting down, too much time on the computer. I think the reason why I love doing the darts so much is because of the people, and I genuinely mean it. Behind the scenes, Lucy in makeup, Jonesy, the floor manager, the directors, just brilliant, the producers. I just genuinely love these people. So anything really that means I'm working with a team. And also I love journalism. I love asking questions. I love getting interesting, hopefully, lines out of people. I love asking Chris and Alan what they made of the Dinny antics, good or bad. They give an opinion. Mark Wedged as well, of course. So it's really hard to answer that question, because I genuinely do enjoy the presenting because of the people and the asking the questions. And I do love the commentary because it's so live, it's so unscripted. I'm fortunate enough to travel to America a lot, and World Cups, Euros, all over the world. I've been so lucky. So I think I've had a few pinch me moments commentating at the World Cup when my mum is from South Africa, and that one in 2010 for the BBC was just a pinch me moment with the former England manager Graham Taylor overlooking Table Mountain in Cape Town. So I'm not really answering your question at all, but I think I'm genuinely just so grateful to have the opportunity to do any and all of this stuff. So presenting the darts and commentating football doesn't narrow it down at all, sorry.
That's fair enough. We'll get to some listener questions to finish up in a moment, but as we are a darts podcast, we should talk about your role in the game. You joined up with the ITV team in 2015 to present their coverage. Did that come as part of the package when you joined ITV, or how did it materialise getting to do the darts?
Yeah, it came completely out of the blue. I didn't have an agent at the time, so there's certainly no meetings going on. There's certainly no knocking on the door and asking questions. Absolutely none of that. I was happily at the BBC. I was presenting their women's football coverage. I was, what was I doing? Was I commentating? Was I presenting? I think I was presenting, because after I had my daughter nearly 13 years ago, that's when I went slightly away from the commentary side and more into the presenting, just because that's what I was asked to do at the time, and it did work well with having babies. And anyway, things were going well there, and then I got literally a phone call out of the blue from my old boss, who I knew from the BBC, and he rang me up and asked me, basically he meant to come in person, but he was ill, so he said, look, I'll do this over the phone, but basically I'd like to offer you a contract and I'd like you to present Euro 2016 football and World Cup 2018 and these international matches in between, England highlights at Wembley, and the darts. And I was genuinely gobsmacked, because it had come out of nowhere, and I'm absolutely thrilled and completely delighted, and it was just brilliant to get my teeth into a sport I hadn't covered. I'd watched it, but I hadn't covered it before, and it was totally different to cover it than to watch it. And I dived straight in October 2015, went to Belgium, to Hasselt, to the European Championship, and it was absolutely wild, and it's been a crazy ride ever since, and I've genuinely loved every single minute of it.
Glad to hear it. Well, we've got some listener questions. Lots of them have come in. The first one comes in from Clive G. Says, what's Jacqui's highest checkout and what would be her darts nickname?
Oh God, my highest checkout. I can't even give you one, because I'm so pathetic. But I've got a really good board set up. We kind of play after a few drinks when we have friends over in summer house at the bottom of the garden, and it's a really, really good setup. And my husband loves it in particular. Because he'll have some lads' nights in there, and they have their own competition. But highest checkout. Nothing to write home about at all, I'm afraid. I'm very much a fair weather kind of player. And nickname, that's a tricky one, because everybody I know, all my friends will tell you I give them nicknames. I don't have a single friend, acquaintance, anybody who I don't have a specific nickname for, but I haven't obviously got one for myself. But darts-wise, I think it would have to be She-Wolf, because I'm from Wolverhampton. I hesitate because there was a prominent Wolves fan who very, very sadly passed away last year, and her nickname was She-Wolf, but maybe in tribute to her, but it would have to be She-Wolf, definitely.
That'd be a nice touch. And Neil Saddington says, who's your favourite player to watch?
Oh man, come on. Really hard. Okay, so I have favourite players, I admit, in terms of personality, and I have favourite players to watch. Favourite players to watch, obviously Luke Littler at the moment, because he is box office. He really is. When he plays, you just don't want to take your eyes off the stage. You know, a lot of the time I'm kind of getting stats and making notes of every single leg and what have you. But, you know, when he's on, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to watch the board here because this is great. Just high octane kind of feel around the place with the anticipation at the moment. So that's an obvious one. I actually love Rapid Ricky Evans, and I'm not saying that because of his antics at the weekend. I know he's supposedly slowed down a little bit, but I do love the fast players. Michael Smith, the rhythm. Steve Beaton, his throw is just velvet. So it's a real shame that he's on his farewell tour now. But yeah, and Barney as well in terms of throw. It's just so easy on the eye. In terms of actual players, if I'm allowed to have a few favourites. Am I allowed a few favourites? Okay, Johnny Clayton. I love Johnny Clayton because he's just the nicest bloke. So I'm very biased in that. Not biased, but as in I just really like people who are just super lovely behind the scenes, and Johnny's one of those. But there are plenty as well. But yeah, Johnny Clayton is just, when you see him, he's like, how are you? How's your family? And he might just come off stage or something. It's like, Johnny, you can't ask me how my family is when, you know, you're the dude who's just come off stage and you're pumped or you've just lost or whatever. But yeah, he's just a really, really lovely person.
Yeah, definitely echoing that when we've had him on. And this one might cause a bit of an argument the next time that the ITV team gets together. Warren wants to know who's got the worst dress sense, Mace or Alan Warren a little.
Oh, I'm staying out that one. But I did tease Woz last night. You noticed he had a new grey, very young man's shirt over the top of his shirt, so he was going a bit trendy. So I gave him a lot of stick off air for that. You know, telling he'd just been to Burton's and what have you. But he can take it. Woz. But yeah, I'm not getting involved with that.
Next one comes from someone you'll know. He works with the ITV team, Carl Fletcher, who says, what's your favourite moment from all the darts events that you've covered for ITV?
God, yeah, Carl's brilliant, by the way. His stats help. My goodness, what a fantastic addition he's been. Favourite moment? There have been some real thrillers. Like, you know, when you have a huge shot of adrenaline, and those are the ones that I go back to saying high octane again, because you have those kind of moments when you're in a venue and you just cannot believe what you're witnessing. We're lucky that we've had so many of those moments, but I would say, do you remember the UK Open 2016 when Rob Cross was O'Reilly's qualifier? Of course, you will remember that. Do you remember that match against Michael van Gerwen? There were 18 perfect darts. There was a 9-darter, 2 170 finishes, and it was just like your breath would be like, how do you get any higher than that? How do you go any further than that? And Michael van Gerwen, when he's at his very, very best, he's just been unbelievable over the years. And he won every single match from when I started in October 2015 to the UK Open in 2018 when he was beaten by Jeffrey Deswan. Every single match he won that I was in attendance, whether I was there as a fan at the Sky event or whether I was working on it, it was just, or even watching pretty much, it was just mad. So definitely that 2016 UK Open. I think Littler Hector this weekend was right up there. First 5 legs took only 7 minutes. Hector was averaging 125 after those 5 legs. Littler 118. So that was insane. And I also loved Daryl Gurney's first major win in 2018, the Players' Championship Finals. Do you remember when he won it on the ball? That was absolutely brilliant against MVG. And his celebration when he just went absolutely nuts and kind of nearly ran off the stage. So yeah, there are a few highlights, but there are so many moments over the years.
Some special moments. And the last one from our listeners, SWR Darts Coaching. Is there any venue in the UK or the world that you would love to present the darts from?
Well, I've been saying every year to ITV, I was like, come on, can we go to New York, please? Can we go to New York? Come on, send us to New York. Because obviously we don't do the studios from most of those. Yeah, we have been asking regularly in New York, but a lot of it, people don't realise that a lot of the issues, you know, when people sort of say, oh, how come you're not doing this and that, a lot of it's scheduling, basically. But that's not my domain. I would love to go to some outdoor darts, because having been to Minehead so many times, and it's always freezing. It's always windy, and we kind of joke, why don't they do it outdoors? That'd be a leveller. But they had the Dubai Darts Masters about 10 years or so ago, and that was an outdoor event. I know it's a slightly crazy idea, and it has to be super still for obvious reasons, but I think somewhere outdoors would be fun. We could pick a nice, warm, still venue.
Never say never. Well, Jacqui, it's a pleasure to get you on the show. Really do appreciate you taking out the time to have a chat with us, and keep up the great work you're doing with ITV, and best of luck for the rest of the year as well.
Thanks so much. Thanks to you and to Burton as well, Alex. Keep up the great work.
Thanks again to Jacqui for joining us, and on to our question of the week, sponsored by Condor Darts. Off the back of the Euro Tour at the weekend, another successful event in Belgium, we've asked our listeners where should be the next destination to host a Premier League darts night. The options we've put in our poll are Belgium, a second night in the Netherlands, a second night in Germany, or other. Which one are you going for?
Well, I want to go other because I would love to see a Premier League night come here to the United States one of these years. I don't think it is as unmanageable as it might sound, at least especially if that weekend is like the first weekend of the season. And maybe that's where to go. The weekend to start the season in Las Vegas, bring darts back into the desert. Yeah, okay, it's not going to be as warm in January as it is in July, but it's still nice there in January. And maybe that's a good place to go to get darts back in Las Vegas. Is of course the ADO event there that weekend, which a couple of the tour card holders went and competed in this year. Maybe PDC helping growing North American darts. I mean, obviously with the CDC, but getting a Premier League in North America, a Premier League night would be great. But being realistic, the Premier League is Sky Sports' marquee exhibition. The World Championships is obviously their biggest event over the holidays, and one of the Sky Sports channels mutates into Sky Sports Darts for a fortnight and a half during the World Championships. But the Premier League is their baby, and we've talked to Matt Porter before, and he's mentioned how the schedule is at least partially dictated by what Sky can manage. And when those couple nights they leave the UK, it is a big commitment for Sky to get their entire team and get the entire production and to get the entire event there. So that limits it. But I do think more nights out of the UK should be in the offing in the future. And I could see a second night in Germany. I could see somewhere in Eastern Europe, but that is a longer journey to go on. But I could also see in the long run, why not a night in France or Italy or Spain, as Spain has actually dropped off in terms of having people on tour recently. But France now has 2 tour card holders. Italy has their first tour card holder. Trying to grow the sport and get to one of the other iconic cities of Europe would be a great way to grow the event, to go to Paris one year, to go to Rome another year, because those are marquee cities. And to say you've been there, to say you've had an event there, I think adds something, even if the audience isn't necessarily already there. You certainly will have some people local who will buy up tickets in droves, but you can probably also sell those tickets to people who be like, oh yeah, that'll be cool to go to a Premier League night in whatever city. I think taking the Premier League to somewhere where darts isn't quite yet big, but is one of those marquee cities of Europe, is that next move. So I'm going other, because I do think one of those marquee cities of Europe, Paris or Rome, Istanbul, Athens, one of those would just be such an iconic place to get a Premier League night. And I think that's something the PDC would like to do to help grow the sport in places where they haven't quite penetrated as much yet. So that's why I'm going other. Although, as I said, I would love it to get to the US once. Be a little easier for me to go if that's the case.
That's a cool idea. And Premier League darts in Paris, Rome, has certainly come a long way from 2005 when it was in Doncaster, Colchester, Kidderminster and so on. We're looking at these big arenas now, and we're looking at ways that the Premier League can get even bigger. And yeah, I like that idea of going to some cities, maybe not on darts fans' radar at the moment, but would make an impact and raise a few eyebrows, that's for sure. And looking at our poll at the moment, one of our most one-sided polls for quite some time, I've got to say. And thanks as always to Condor Darts for sponsoring the question of the week. At the moment, the poll on Twitter, 73% of our listeners are going with Belgium, 9% are going with a second night in the Netherlands, 6% are going with a second night in Germany, 12% are going like you, Burton, going with other, and a few of our listeners getting in touch. Archie Shep 234, I want to see a Bournemouth or Southampton night. DP has said Bahrain. Not sure how likely Bahrain is, but Bournemouth, that has been a venue on the Premier League in the past. And this question does stem a little bit from Luke Littler's post-final comments on stage. He said, it's my first time in Belgium. I think there should be a Premier League darts in Belgium. So we've broken our non-Premier League chat on the show this week by talking about the Premier League, although not talking about the players and the matches that are going on each Thursday at the moment. But I think, and you mentioned it about Matt Porter there, when it comes to the Premier League and putting on these nights outside of the UK, taking all of the stuff that you got to take with you, all the cameras, all the equipment, the stage, everything like that, it does bring with it a lot of extra cost. So there does need to be a scenario where the reward is worth it, or it is financially more lucrative for them to take what would probably be one of the nights in the UK to somewhere else. And at the moment, we do have that one night in Germany. We do have that one night in the Netherlands. If it was me in charge, I would be looking at adding another country to that list. And I don't know an awful lot about the different indoor arenas in these countries, but you'd say the most likely would be Belgium or Poland. And you could maybe throw in Hungary, the Czech Republic, Denmark. They've hosted Euro Tour events. Some of them have hosted the World Series as well. But can you imagine a Premier League where it goes to 8 or 9 different countries each season? And I think it would be a big selling point for the Premier League, having those different atmospheres in the different countries. And I think that would attract a lot more viewers to it as well. And we've spoken before about the current format of the Premier League, the same 8 players, the nightly tournament. It does feel quite repetitive watching it at home. And I'd add in the fact as well that the venues, the bulk of them being in the UK and Ireland, a lot of the nights can feel very samey as well with the crowd. So maybe including more countries, branching out, bringing a different vibe to it would attract more people to watch. So I'm not sure how close we are to that new country joining that Premier League map, but if I had to guess, I'm looking at either Belgium or Poland to be the next ones to join that list.
Now, last Friday was International Women's Day. How would you assess the current state of the women's game in 2024?
Yeah, we've not spoken too much about ladies darts this year. We have got the women's series coming back next week, so you can expect some more chat coming very soon. But looking at the ladies game as a whole, we are a few months into the year now. It looks to be in a relatively good position right now, but I do think there is a lot more that could be done to make it better. And for me anyway, it kind of feels like we're in a bit of a limbo now with the investment from the PDC, which, okay, make no mistake about it, it's been a huge boost for the ladies. The prize money that they put up for the women's series events, for the women's match play, got the other incentives as well. It's been a welcome investment into the ladies game. But I do wonder, what is that next step? What are the PDC, what have they got planned or are looking to do with the ladies game? Are we at that ceiling now in terms of what the PDC are going to do? I don't know, but I kind of feel like they've shot themselves in the foot with the whole World Championship situation last year. We spoke a lot about that. Beau opting to play Lakeside, then her spot Ali Pali went to the tour card holder qualifier, so we missed out on one of the ladies being in the field. And one of the big subplots for this year, okay, it was still in March, but it's likely going to be, what is Beau's decision going to be this year? Is she going to play Lakeside now that she's won back-to-back women's world titles in the WDF, or is she going to look to go back to Ali Pali? That's one of the big storylines for me this year, and as the year plays out, we'll find out the answer to that. But if you are a ladies player in 2024, you've got the Women's Series, which is that chance to play in that setup that mirrors the Pro Tour, what the professionals playing. You've got the chance to play at the Winter Gardens, live on TV, the spots in the other 2 majors. Then you've got the WDF. They are offering a World Championship, and it's the only one that is exclusive for the ladies, still with that decent prize pot, 25 grand to the winner. The downside, though, and we've spoken about this when the event was on, is that exposure's gone a little bit, hasn't it? Whereas in the past it's been on the BBC, Eurosport, the WDF. They don't have a deal in place at the moment, and yes, it's free on YouTube, but that's not going to appeal to a more broader, wider audience that maybe stumble across it flicking through the channels. So unless you know about it, you're not going to find it. So I think the ladies game as a product, it has got so much potential. You've got Beau, Fallon, Lisa, Makuru, Eileen de Graaf. There's lots of names, and You're going to hear from Vicky Pruim in a moment. She said there's about 20 to 30 names that could win these titles each weekend, and it does feel a little bit divided. You've not got one universal tour. Some ladies, they'll play the women's series, they won't do a lot of WDF, vice versa, or they'll do a mix of both. And I think as darts fans, we want to see the top ladies facing off against each other as often as possible and be able to watch it. And the women's series, that seems to be the place where we're going to get that at the moment. And as long as the PDC, they keep up that investment, then I think the standard across the board is going to continue to grow. And you've just got to hope that there is going to be more investment coming in, maybe from the PDC, maybe from elsewhere, and we are going to see more of the ladies' game on TV and get it in front of that bigger audience as well.
Fully agree. I think the women's game is in as good, actually even better position than it's ever been in. And I think the PDC Women's Series is a big reason for that. Yeah, it took a few years for it to really find its feet, but that's mostly because of COVID. And the Women's Series is not the only thing going in female darts because it's only 5-6 weekends a year. So you need other tournaments in the WDF as well as other circuits and other sources for players to go the other weekends to compete. And during COVID, that wasn't happening for obvious reasons. So the quality did backtrack for a couple of years at a very bad time for it to backtrack, because we had just had Fallon Sherrick's big breakthrough at the Alexandra Palace, where she beat Ted Evans, where she beat Mensur Suljovic, where she played Chris Dobie in a very, very tight match in the third round. Dobie won the last few sets to run out of it the winner, but it's the forgotten match of her trio because she lost it. But it was a very, very good performance again for her. And women's darts was at an all-time high, but then the pandemic happens. The sport stagnated for a couple of years. Fallon still, played very well in 2020, making a final of a World Series event the following year. But for the rest of the competitors, there was definitely a decrease in their performances because there just weren't opportunities for them to go play. And some of those players, it's taken quite some time for them to really find their game again. But now, with a couple years of full calendar, not just in the PDC, but around the world under their belt, 2022 and 2023, in addition to the increased quality that those weekends of the Women's Series under professional conditions have brought, the quality of play is better than I think it's ever been, and it's still improving. We've had for a while now we had a top two for a while between Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick. We didn't see as much Makoto Suzuki because it was tough for her to travel during COVID, but I think everyone knew that once she was back, she would be there as well, and the emergence of Beau Greaves made that, a big four at the top of women's darts. But we've seen now in the past year that it's not really just four. We've seen other players emerge and reemerge as players who have the game to not just pick up an odd upset now and then, but to go all the way and claim titles, whether that's in the Women's Series or whether that is in events around the world that the top players go to. We've seen Rhiannon O'Sullivan, after pretty much a decade away, re-establish herself as one of the best female players in the world. We've seen Aline de Graaf, who was number one, number two in the BDO going, 7-8 years ago. She dropped off during COVID, but she's now getting back to her best. There's some signs that Lorraine Winstanley might be getting back now. She's not been the same player since COVID hit. We're seeing Anastasia Dabalmasova come back. We've seen, new players like Robin Byrne come through. Kirsty Hutchinson has reestablished herself, making a final at Lakeside and also having some good runs in the Women's Series. And of course, Noah Lynn van Leuven, who last year really came on strong to get into that last spot in the Women's World Match Play in Blackpool, and I think is even better now. She's I think closer to the top four than she was then. And then also, of course, the Spanish player Almudena Fajardo Ayuso, who we haven't seen as much of. And the list can keep going. There are so many good players, and that's not even talking about Vicky Pruim, who we'll hear from in a second, who beat Beau Greaves at the weekend. I think the women's game has never been this strong, and I think 12 months from now, I will look back on that comment and laugh because it'll have become so much stronger in that intervening year.
Well, you mentioned her. Let's bring her in now. Here's our chat with the newly crowned Isle of Man Classic champion, Vicky Pruim. I'm pleased to say we're joined by the newly crowned Isle of Man Classic champion, Vicky Pruim. Thanks for the time, Vicky. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. A little tired, still recovering from the trip, but otherwise I'm good.
Glad to hear it. Well, there is only one place to start, and that is with the weekend just gone, beating general consensus the best ladies player in the world right now, Beau Greaves, 5-4 in the final of the Isle of Man Classic. What did that win mean to you at the weekend?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. It's been a while since I won a big ranking tournament, but I knew I was playing well. I got to the final in Scotland, lost to Fallon. Yeah, I knew I had a chance, but Beau wasn't on her A game, really. But I still had to play well to beat her.
I'll come on to that final in a moment, some key finishes you had. And you mentioned it's been a little while since your last ranking title, nearly 7 years. You mentioned the run that you had to the final of the Scottish Open. So going into the weekend, did you feel like a title was just around the corner?
With the form I've been having while practicing, I thought, the possibility is there to win one of these. If I can bring my practice game into the games playing there, then they have to play well to beat me. But it's always on the day, isn't it, with darts?
Definitely. And we've got to mention how the final with Beau played out. A little unusual circumstances, the referee making a mistake, calling game shot on the match when Beau went 4-2 up. Were you aware yourself that it was first to 5 legs?
I was a little confused when he said game shot because I thought it was best of 9. And when Beau came up to me, she said, I thought it was best of 9. I said, so did I, but he's called game shot, so probably it wasn't. And then somebody on the side made the referee aware that, no, you're wrong. It's not game shot. It's best of 9. So I looked at Beau and she just went, oh, well, we'll go again then.
And the game resumes. You check out the 83 on the ball to make it 4-4. Suddenly you're thrown first in that deciding leg. What's going through your head at that moment?
I just thought to myself, play a good leg now. If you get the first shot, then you play a good leg now. You put her under pressure, and I got down to a finish, and I thought, you have to take this now. It's now or never. And luckily for me, it went in.
Yeah, that's what you did. A 92 finish gets you over the line fairly comfortably in the decider as well. And to beat the game's top ladies player in a final for you, where does that title rank in all the ones that you've won during your career?
It's one of the higher ones ranked in my career. I think the only one that tops this is the World Cup singles. That was maybe more emotional and more special to me, but this is one of the highest ranked. It's not easy to beat Beau. She's very good, as everybody knows. So
yeah, we'll come back to that World Cup a bit later as well. And as this is the first time that we've had you on the show, lots to talk about, and we always like to find out where the journey into darts all started for our guests. So take us back to when and how you first got introduced to the game.
We have to go back a long time ago. I think it was 87. My brother played in a local league, and he still lived at home, and I was about 13 at the time, 12, 13. So he put up a dartboard in the garage, and he didn't like standing there on his own, so he went, come and practice with me. And I thought, I don't want to play this silly game, throw 3 darts at a board. I don't want to do this. It's cold in the garage. But he kept nagging and nagging. So in the end, I went, all right then. And it kind of started from there. I got pretty decent after a little while, and he said, you have to keep this up. And then started taking me to the local bar where he played his league games and had me playing a few games there. I think the first prize was like a raw chicken, or it was a basket with cheese and stuff like that. So, but it was fun, and it got me going because I did pretty okay in them.
prizes have certainly improved over the years, and you mentioned it was, it's through the family you got into the game. I mean, back then in the 1980s darts, it was going through a golden period here in the UK. Lots of people watching it on TV. What was it like in Belgium? Were you able to watch the likes of Eric Bristow, Jacqui Wilson, or was it just through the family playing yourself that you got into it more?
No, luckily it was through my brother we got to know of darts, and then luckily we had the BBC on the TV in Belgium at the time, so we could watch the Lakeside then. So yeah, I grew up watching Eric Bristow, Jacqui Wilson, John Lowe, and all of them. Really why the Lakeside has a special place for us, because of all the nostalgia that's been there.
Definitely, and one of your first senior titles comes at the Belgian Masters 1989, so only a few years after you've started playing. You were regularly winning titles on home soil during that period as well. Am I right in saying that you took a little break from darts sometime around the 90s as well?
2002, when I moved from Belgium to Sweden, and you moved to a new country, you have to learn the language and find a job, and darts was kind of put to the backside, so then I had a break for almost 10 years.
So just before you take that break in the game, a lot of milestones for you, winning titles, the Dutch Open 2001, a year later you're at Lakeside making your debut in the WDF World Championships. You've gone from watching it on TV to actually being there playing it as well. What was that moment like, going to Lakeside for the first time?
Very special and very nervous, because it is, as I've said to anybody, you can play on how many stages in the world, all over. It's not going to give you that feeling as the Lakeside stage. It has something special.
And you won your first game in the quarterfinals, just lost out to Trina Gulliver in a last set in the semi-finals. You mentioned there, not long after you move in countries, you take a break from the game, but at Lakeside at the time, were you probably not expecting it to be 16 years before you were back there in a World Championship?
No, probably not, but yeah, life happens and sometimes you need to make choices, and at the time when I was living there, I just had kind of odd jobs via agency work and stuff, so the traveling was pretty expensive, because from Sweden you have to fly pretty much to all the competitions. It's not like you can jump in the car from like Belgium, or you can go drive to Holland and Germany and France. And it's different from Sweden, so it was too expensive for me to do it, to keep it up. A few years to get settled, and then I thought, we'll give it another shot and see.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I'm interested to know, I'm sure our listeners will be as well, your background. You touched on it a little bit, being born in Belgium, then moving over to Sweden, taking up the Swedish nationality, and now you're based here in England. Can you just walk us through how those moves came about for you?
Well, I met my partner and she was Swedish, so I moved over there, and circumstances happened, so we split up, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I had a decent job there, and but then through darts I met my new partner, and she was English, so after a lot of talking we decided I'll move to England, start over again here.
And how long have you been over here in England for now?
I moved in the summer of 2019.
And just before that, you were back at Lakeside, and just before that as well, another milestone for you out in Japan, winning that women's singles in the WDF World Cup in 2017. You mentioned it being an emotional win. How special was that win for you?
It was very special. I've never won a big title like that. I'd won some of the big opens, but that is something special when you play for the national team. There is a lot of pride in it. So, and I was the very first female to ever do it for Sweden. So they've won a lot of medals in other categories, but not in the singles. So that was a special moment for me.
And you're then back at Lakeside in 2018. There was a late call-up to play at the O2 in 2020. You're then playing in the first WDF Women's World Championship a couple of years ago, 2022. What were your, I guess, biggest takeaways from playing in those events and on the big stage?
It's just always nice to be able to qualify or even get the call up to play there is always nice. And it gives you a boost. If you can win a game on the stage, then it gives you a boost. Confidence goes up. I can still do it. I can still measure myself with the big ones in the game. So it gives you a really nice feeling.
And you've been around darts, the ladies' game, back to the 80s through the noughties. Now we're in 2024. What's your view on the state of the ladies' game right now? And if you were given one wish, something you could bring into the ladies' game, what would it be?
Well, to be fair, the standard of the ladies nowadays is so high. It's a lot higher than it used to be. I mean, when I played before I moved to Sweden and had my break there, you had Trina Gullifer, Frances Unselar, Chrissy Manley, Mandy Solomons. Those were the players that could do those averages in the 90s and 100 averages. But that was it. The rest of the field was more behind. And then you had the likes of Dita. You had maybe 5-6 players who were sticking out of the ladies' game at the time. But now you go around at the competitions and you have at least 20-30 women who can throw those averages. So it's not like you're looking at the draw and you say, oh, I'm going to have a walkthrough to the quarterfinals or something like that, because that's not the case anymore. And you have some of the young girls that are coming through. Beau was the first one, but you have at least 4 or 5 more that are coming through now, and they are so good. So hopefully the one wish I have is that they could find a sponsor and put some more money into the ladies' game. I know it's difficult because the turnout is not the same as in the men's competitions. So, but if the money would be boosted up a little bit, I think you would have more young people willing to step up to the plate now.
Yeah, we'd definitely like to see that. And we should mention you're part of the AASJ Sports Management. How much of a support have they been, and your other sponsors as well? Because we know many of the ladies players, it is juggling the darts with work. It can be tricky to do both at the same time.
Yeah, it's not easy when you have a full-time job and then traveling, because all your holidays go to that, and every earning you have from a competition you usually put aside to cover most expenses of your next trip maybe. So for me, getting the help of AASG management has been a real relief, because it takes away the pressure a little bit of having to pay. They help me out financially now, so for me that's a good thing. Don't need to worry about the next competition too much.
Looking ahead, we've got the PDC Women's Series returning next week. You had a run to the final late on last season in one of the events. Again, another win over Beau Greaves on the way to that final. What's your plan for this year? Are you looking to enter all the weekends, or are you going to pick and choose the ones that you can commit to?
We've not decided it. We're going to sit down and plan our year, me and Andrew. But we said we're going to try and do all the PDC this year, and hopefully qualify for Blackpool. That's the first goal. And then see how it goes with that ranking, and then look at the WDF a little bit. If I have maybe a chance getting to Lakeside, we might do some more WDF ones in between, if possible.
We touched on it quite a bit there. I was going to finish off beyond the Women's Series. What else have you got lined up darts-wise for the rest of 2024? Are there any tournaments already in the diary you're most looking forward to getting out to?
The only one that I have planned is the British Open and Classic. I think it is in Bridlington. That's in September. And besides the ladies series, I have not planned in anything yet, because I don't know. We're going to sit down and plan it a little bit better, so we know what we're looking at. Days I can book off at work and which ones I can't. So.
Well, Vicky, it's great to get you on the show. Congratulations on the big win at the weekend. Thanks very much for giving us some of your time, and wish you all the best for what else is to come in 2024 as well.
Thank you very much. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks again to Vicky for joining us, and we'll finish up the show with the mailbag, your listener questions. We're going to answer them before we go, and the first one comes from ACW Darts. Without counting the playoffs and with there being 10 nights left, how many wins do you think Luke Littler can get in the Premier League?
I mean, how many can he get? He can get 10. I don't think he will get 10, but he absolutely can, because he's live every single time he steps onto the hockey. And you have to be on your game to beat him. Sure, he'll have the occasional bad match, but his occasional bad match is still in the high 80s, low 90s, and it's much more occasional than most other players. He hasn't hit his top stride yet in the Premier League, but I don't think it's that far off. And he's lost a lot of very tight, very hard fought matches. So I'm gonna say he'll win 3 nights before it's all said and done. But I would not be surprised if I'm off by 7, because he is good enough to find a way to steal all 10 nights. Because he just is.
Yeah, I've just dug up the Wikipedia page for the Premier League to check through all the results, and I am a bit surprised that Luke Littler hasn't won one of these nights yet. He's been very consistent. He's won that first match of the night, banking the 2 points 5 out of 6 times so far. And okay, I know it'd be different circumstances, pressure and so on, but if you were to just take the results from the quarterfinals, so we are going under the older format, Luke Littler, Rob Cross, they'd be joint top of the table, 10 points each. But we saw on Sunday, Luke Littler, he can put it all together on one night, 3 games on stage. He won them all. He won the title. Maybe winning that Euro Tour, the confidence he's going to take from that, it's a similar format, could serve him well for this upcoming week. And he's got Michael van Gerwen first, who we've seen he's had his injury problems the last few weeks, so it's a good time to play him, you could say. Then Rob Cross or Nathan Aspinall. He's just beaten Rob Cross in that brilliant Euro Tour final, beat Nathan Aspinall in the Premier League last week. So I think he makes the final this week, and that could well be his first title. As for how many, you went with 3. I did have 3 down here as well, and I don't think that's a stretch either. I think we're probably going to end up saying that was a bit of an underestimate. So I'll go one more. I won't go the same as you. I'll go that he wins 4 of the last 10 nights.
Well, we'll see who wins. He'll end up winning 3.5 nights, and it'll be a draw. Now, our next question comes from Darty. Are replays of 180s and leg-winning doubles overdone? Often miss out on a match-winning celebration or final leg fist bump due to a pointless replay. And again, this is him. This is Darty. Am I the only one who finds this annoying?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Not something we often talk about, and we don't really think about it as a viewer watching. But darts on TV is such a high-paced sport that the different camera angles that are used, and there's been a few times on TV where we've had a peek behind the curtain. We've seen how darts is directed in the TV truck with the spotter. It might be Colin Lloyd or Richard Ashdown. He's more involved in it now as well, but you've got the director as well. It's a very intricate and fast working environment, and for me, I can cut them some slack a little bit, because I know that sometimes we might miss a double or a shot and they've gone to the wrong camera, or a player's gone a different route that wasn't expected, and yeah, it can be annoying as a viewer. Same with the crowd as well. If you're there watching, unless you've got unbelievable vision, you are following the darts like we are on the screens as well, which follows what we see on TV. So I think my only gripe, I would say, is that at the end of a game, sometimes they can be a bit quick to chop and change to lots of different camera angles at the end of a match, and you might miss half the player celebration or half the interaction between the players as they say, oh, well done, or in the case of the Littler Pietreczko game, they have a bit more to say to each other. But sometimes they'll cut to the crowd, and for me, I want to see the emotions of the players. I want to see the interaction there. I'm not really fussed about someone holding up a 180 sign or whatever might be going on. So for me, yeah, if in those final moments, stick to the stage if you can.
And you mentioned that, it was not something we think of. It's actually something I was thinking of during the UK Open. But I've thought about it a few other times recently. So this is something that I've actually been thinking about. It wasn't something I thought was a big enough problem that I would have written in a question about. But I do agree with the question. I think it's just gone that little bit overboard. Not significantly. Because, especially like a lot of times, the 180, sorry, not the 180, the 180 as well, but that big double, that big checkout combination, showing it again is the prelude to showing the player's celebration. But I think it's just done a little bit too much, especially in situations where it's not all that big. It's a 32 checkout second dart where the first dart was a perfect marker to go 5-2 up. With a routine hold of throw with the opponent on 188. Why do we need to see that again? It does distract that little bit, and I just don't see the point of re-showing that. I think there's just a little bit too many replays that don't seem to serve a purpose. When it's either a really clutch moment or as that prelude to showing the reaction that we might have otherwise missed, that's big celebration or whatever, then I like it. But again, I don't think it's a major problem, but I do agree that there's just that little bit, 10% too much of needless replays.
Let us know your thoughts on that one as well. And the last of our listener questions, this one's going to be for you, Burton, because you are the stats and the rankings man, comes from Renita McDade. She wants to know, when was the last time an Aussie was in the top 8?
Well, it would have been Simon Whitlock, who he made it up to, I think, number 2 in the world at one point, after making the world final, winning the European Championship, having a lot of other big, deep runs on television in the early teens. Actually, it wasn't even the teens yet. It was the 11s and 12s. We didn't get to the teens quite yet till 2013. But he dropped down in the middle of the decade, but off of the run to the final of the World Grand Prix in 2017, where he lost to Daryl Gurney. He got himself back in the top 8 for about a year and a half through the 2019 World Championships. But he dropped out of the top 8 after that, being displaced after the 2019 World Championships, and started falling down the rankings since then. No other Australian player has made it since then, but Damon Hedda seems on the cusp. He actually was provisionally there in Minehead, but I think he'll be there sometime soon. Anything else for this week?
Well, I just want to say thank you to our guests for joining us, to Jacqui and Vicky for their time. Thank you to our sponsors as well, to Darts Corner and Condor Darts. Links in the description. Do go and check them out. Thank you to everyone for listening as well. We appreciate the support. And last week, when we finished recording, we realised we forgot the sign-off. So I'm going to bring mine back this week. And it was Peter Wright's turn to copy it at the weekend. So I'm going to copy what he said. Dan Dawson did flag it up to us as well. And Dan said that Peter Wright's sign-off was a lot more responsible approach than my Cavalier slogan. But I'm going to keep everyone happy. I'm going to copy what Peter said. So I'm going to merge the two together and say, enjoy the darts and be safe.
I didn't forget. I just decided you forgot. So I was gonna be nice and not one up you by doing both of our sign-offs last week. But this week, yeah, we need to bring him back. Our viewers were rightfully wondered if we were replaced by poor AI that didn't know how to copy us. So we'll bring back those sign-offs this week. Thanks to all of our listeners who enjoyed the darts in our absence and have been hanging tight for the last week to see what we would say this week.